It's a very sad story. And I got to know him. He was such a beautiful man, such a lovely man. Somewhere I saw footage and I saw this thing and I thought, well, surely you've seen.
Picture the chaos, betrayal cutting deep, heart shattering in real time. The crew closest to him finally peeped the game. This man they trusted had been running plays on them the entire time. This wasn't some mix-up or bad timing. This was straight emotional warfare dropping like a bomb. Everybody's out here asking why, but the real answer wasn't chilling in police reports or some corporate damage control statement. It was already exploding at Conan O'Brien's holiday function while the news stayed locked on that tragic Sunday. The red flags were waving hard that night. Impossible to miss. Whatever popped off between Rob and Nick Reiner didn't go down behind private doors. It was raw, out in the open, straight combustible. That last major confrontation didn't stay under wraps. It blew up directly in front of Hollywood's power circle.
Brian telling guests at the party who wanted to call 911 to not do so. Obviously, Conan O'Brien is not responsible for this man's behavior. They had called, and Rob Reiner's son was placed on a psychiatric hold. Rob Reiner and his wife would probably still be alive today. Conan O'Brien stopped a friend from calling 911 during an explosive fight between Rob and Nick Reiner at the comedian's Christmas party, just hours before the director's son allegedly took his parents.
Folks didn't just catch wind of it, they felt the shockwaves rippling through the space. This wasn't some petty argument that disappears. It was a whole dynasty crumbling in front of everyone's eyes. Conan's holiday gathering wasn't your typical industry meet and greet. This was sacred territory where the big shots drop their fronts and actually relax. The atmosphere smelled like fresh pine, premium liquor, and serious money. Laughter bounced off those polished walls until those massive wooden doors swung open, and in stepped Rob, Michelle, and Nick Reiner. The vibe shifted instantly. Conversations hit pause, smiles went stiff, and everyone sensed it. Something dark was about to unfold. Rob was rocking that iconic grin from The Princess Bride and When Harry Met Sally, but up close, it looked completely hollow.
You look at him with his head kind of shaved, and I don't know if that's what he looked like, but he looks like he's got a screw, or an evil screw. So he was 32 years old. He was at a holiday party hosted by Conan O'Brien.
Rob Reiner and Nick got into a, quote, very loud argument. His behavior at Conan's house alarmed the guests because it was so bizarre. One of the guests recalled Rob Reiner telling his son his behavior was inappropriate.
His eyes were locked tight, shoulders carrying mad tension, trying to front like everything was cool while holding back a hurricane. He wasn't there to party. He was there attempting to keep his family from falling apart, to pull his son back before the world witnessed what was really cracking behind the curtain. He believed the industry that built them could somehow repair them, but Nick wasn't cooperating anymore. With his dome freshly shaved and his eyes scanning the room like a predator, he looked more like danger than a guest. Every step felt sharp, calculated, electric. He sliced through the crowd like static disrupting a signal. No warmth, no interest, just pure tension. And then it jumped off. Nick drifted toward Bill Hader, the comedian known for his gentle humor and chill energy, and instead of a friendly greeting, he launched cold, piercing questions straight at his face. No handshake, no smile, just quiet hostility hanging thick like smoke. The room froze again, and in that moment, everyone knew something dangerous was unfolding right before their eyes. "What's your name? Are you famous?" The words sliced through the noise like broken glass. They didn't sound curious, they sounded vicious. Nick wasn't asking to connect, he was flexing dominance, attempting to demolish everything his father ever constructed. He stared down Hollywood royalty and stripped them bare, one conversation at a time. It was ice cold, calculated, and designed to embarrass. Every move screamed rebellion, every glare, every question, a direct shot at Rob's pride. This wasn't chaos, it was warfare. Nick was broadcasting a message loud and public. His father's legacy meant absolutely nothing.
Attended Conan O'Brien's Christmas party. He was wearing a hoodie. Reports are that he was acting weird, apparently accosting celebrities outside. Nick reportedly stormed off in a huff after a tiff with Bill Hader of SNL and Barry at Conan's Christmas party, and that Rob had been telling people, friends, that they were scared for Nick and scared for his mental state, that it was deteriorating.
Across the room, Rob froze solid. His heart was pounding like it might explode. This wasn't embarrassment anymore. It was genuine fear creeping in. He caught it in his son's eyes, that detached, icy stare scanning people like objects, friends, colleagues, decades of loyalty, all reduced to targets under inspection. The party's calm atmosphere shattered in seconds. The laughter died, the music faded, and all eyes turned as the argument exploded between Rob, Michelle, and Nick. It was brutal and unfiltered. Guests who'd known Rob for 4 decades stood there stunned. They weren't watching a Hollywood icon anymore. They were watching a father losing complete control, his authority cracking right in front of them. Michelle, always the steady force, looked terrified, eyes darting across the space like she was desperately searching for an exit. And at the edge of it all stood Conan O'Brien, watching closely. He recognized what he was witnessing wasn't some drunk meltdown. It was something way darker, the look of control completely slipping away. Rob Reiner, a man who once commanded massive casts and billion-dollar productions, now stood powerless in front of his own son. The shouting slowed down, but the atmosphere didn't clear. Rob leaned toward a close friend and whispered, not in anger, but fear, "I'm scared. I don't know what he's gonna do next." The words hit like a gunshot in a silent room. Nobody wanted to believe it, but everyone felt it. The tension hung heavy, impossible to shake. When the Rainers finally bounced, the silence was suffocating.
Tells NBC News that Nick allegedly interrupted a discussion involving comedian Bill Hader. After Bill told him it was a private conversation, Nick reportedly stood still and stared before, quote, storming off. E! News has reached out to representatives for Bill Hader for comment. 32-year-old Nick was arrested the next day for suspicion of murder and is currently being held without bail.
Reiner could face life in prison without the possibility of parole or even the death sentence.
Having the death penalty on the table is absolutely a bargaining chip. The prosecution is going to leverage that to try to get some sort of deal.
In a statement, the couple's two other children, Jake and Romy Reiner, said, "Word cannot even begin to describe the unimaginable pain we are experiencing. They weren't just our parents, they were our best friends."
The crowd didn't gossip. They just watched. Rob and Michelle walked toward their whip like strangers bound by name, not love. The air outside was freezing, the kind that burns when you breathe. The door shut and everything. The music, the laughter, the false safety stayed behind. That car wasn't just carrying them home. It was transporting dread. Los Angeles shimmered like it always does, pretending nothing was wrong. But everyone who saw them leave knew something had shattered. That drive wasn't just quiet. It was haunted. Saturday night had been the warning shot. Sunday morning brought the reckoning. The sun rose over Brentwood like nothing happened. Bright, perfect, merciless. Lawns trimmed, hedges pristine, security cameras still blinking red on the outside. The Reiner estate looked flawless, powerful, untouchable. But inside, the silence wasn't peace. It was heavy and final. The shouting had stopped. The fight was over. Whatever burned the night before had finally reached its end. And then the first sound broke through the stillness. Not alarms, not sirens, just the buzz of the gate intercom. A massage therapist arrived expecting a normal session with Rob and Michelle, another routine appointment in a house built on legacy and discipline. She pressed the button once, nothing. Pressed again, still nothing.
This is someone who also lived with his parents. Nick Reiner lived here with his parents. We still don't know who it was that made the initial call, but NBC4 Investigates also has learned that the daughter was here at the home when police arrived. Now, as far as Nick Reiner is concerned, the troubled son of Rob Reiner and Michelle Reiner, who had been in and out of rehab. There was a documentary that was made about him that involved his father. NBC4 has now confirmed that he remains isolated from other prisoners. He's not in general population. He is under a watch, a video watch, if you will. Colleen and Michael mean that everything he does is being watched and monitored on video. He is not in the prison system per se. He is in a medical ward in the prison system, and Nick Reiner right now remains behind bars without bail. When we see you tonight at 7, reaction to the death of Rob and Michelle Reiner that is still reverberating around the world. I'm Robert Kovacic here in Brentwood. Let's go back to you.
The quiet pressed back harder, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Something wasn't right, and deep down she knew it. She called the house. No answer. Cell phones rang endlessly, swallowed by silence. Something felt off. The morning rhythm was disrupted, the air too still. Instead of calling 911, she did what anyone close to the family would do. She reached out to someone who knew that house inside out. She called Rory Reiner. Rory lived just across the street, always close enough to feel safe. That call cracked open the illusion of a normal Sunday. The comfort of proximity suddenly turned into a curse. Rory didn't hesitate, not for a second. She didn't wait for reassurance or logic, she just ran. Picture it. A daughter sprinting across a quiet Brentwood street, heart pounding like a drum, breath sharp in the cold morning air. Her mind scrambled for excuses. Maybe they're asleep, maybe their phones died, maybe everything's fine. But deep down, she knew something was off, something she couldn't name yet. Reaching the gate, she and her roommate rushed inside, desperate for a sign of normalcy. But the second Rory stepped in, the world changed. The air was heavy. The house felt wrong, too still, too cold. Familiar rooms turned alien. Every creak echoed like a warning. The smell of home was there, twisted by something unnatural. And then she found him. We don't need to spell out what she witnessed. Her reaction said everything. Rory didn't scream. She didn't call out. She ran. She burst through the front door, collapsing on the driveway, gasping like she'd lost all the air in her body. Minutes later, flashing lights lit up the hedges. A first responder stepped out to deliver words no child should ever hear. Michelle was gone too. In less than 20 minutes, Rory went from checking in on her parents to standing alone in a world that no longer made sense. Detectives began their walkthrough. Cameras flashed. Neighbors whispered.
Nick, who has been charged with those murders, we have learned that he has been was diagnosed before the murders, diagnosed with schizophrenia. And was under the care of a psychiatrist. And his behavior, especially in the month before the murders, was alarming. That he was exhibiting dangerous behavior, we're told, erratic behavior, and it was getting worse and worse. So dangerous that 3 or 4 weeks ago, doctors changed the meds he was taking for the schizophrenia. Now, when that happens, and you may have a loved one who has taken medicine for mental illness, oftentimes it's a cocktail of medicines and they have to get it just right. And when it's off, it can create even bigger problems than the person had before. And we're told that was the case with Nick, that the medicines exacerbated his schizophrenia and was making him even more dangerous, more erratic. The doctors were trying to adjust the medicines to no avail, that they still couldn't get it right, and Nick was spinning out of control. The words we were told were he was out of his head, and that you have a situation where he's also abusing drugs, illegal drugs, and those drugs, when consumed, can actually exacerbate the schizophrenia.
But one detail cut through all the noise. There was no forced entry, no broken glass, no busted locks, no alarms. The scene was pristine. That single fact flipped the entire case upside down. This wasn't a break-in from the outside. It came from within. It confirmed the fear Rob Reiner had whispered the night before. I don't know what he's going to do next. The danger wasn't waiting beyond the gates. It was already inside. The house wasn't invaded. It was betrayed. The door had been left open out of love, and that love had been weaponized against them. By evening, the Reiner estate wasn't a home anymore. It was a crime scene, a sealed reminder of what trust had cost. Rory stood behind the yellow tape staring at the house that raised her, now hollow and lifeless, and while she collapsed again under the weight of shock. Something else was already unfolding 15 miles away, something even darker. The city braced for a full-blown manhunt. Sirens, helicopters, chaos. Everyone expected a runaway suspect spiraling out of control, but what they got instead was colder than fiction. LAPD surveillance footage from a gas station near Exposition and Vermont shattered the narrative. The video showed Nick Reiner calm, composed, disturbingly ordinary. No panic, no fear, no attempt to hide, just quiet focus. He walked in wearing a black and green jacket, baseball cap low, a red backpack slung over his shoulders. He didn't rush or sneak. He browsed, moved through the aisles slowly, pausing at the coolers like a man deciding what drink to buy, not a man escaping chaos. He picked up a sports drink, checked the label, thought it over, and stepped into line. He waited patiently behind strangers who had no idea they were standing next to the most wanted man in Los Angeles. No urgency, no guilt, no visible stress, just eerie calm. That footage shook investigators to the core because what it showed wasn't madness or confusion. It was control, ice cold and deliberate. The kind that made everyone watching realize this wasn't just tragedy anymore. It was something far worse. He paid with a credit card. Swipe, receipt, done. That single act hit investigators like a punch. The man accused of committing the unthinkable stood calmly in line, bought a drink, and blended into normal life like nothing happened. No panic, no shaking hands, just eerie calm under bright fluorescent lights. That footage shattered expectations. Even the cashier later told police he seemed polite, relaxed, totally normal. Experts were stunned. A true mental break usually leaves chaos behind. Confusion, panic, disarray. But Nick's behavior wasn't chaotic. It was controlled. It looked like a man who boxed up the horror in his head, sealed it tight, and flipped a switch back into survival mode. He didn't drive from Brentwood to Exposition Boulevard. He used public transport, calmly navigating LA's system like a commuter, not a fugitive. Every move required planning, transfers, timing, awareness. This wasn't confusion. it was calculation. Cameras traced his route to a small hotel in Santa Monica, and that's where things turned darker. Inside the room, he didn't collapse or lose control. He covered the windows with sheets. That detail chilled investigators because that's not delusion, that's avoidance. He knew people would be searching. Helicopters flying, headlines spreading. That room became his bunker. Forensics later confirmed it was likely used to clean up. He had to wash off, to switch clothes, to erase traces of what came before. Every detail pointed to intent, not madness. He wasn't lost in confusion. He was managing the fallout step by step. And when LAPD finally found him, there was no chase, no fight, no chaos, just eerie composure. Nick Reiner was walking alone. When officers approached, he didn't resist. He surrendered quietly, calm to the very end. But the real twist wasn't his capture, it was where he ended up. Nick wasn't placed with other inmates. He was moved into a high-security medical ward, isolated under 24/7 surveillance. Every breath, every movement watched and logged. Officially, it's for his protection. High-profile cases draw danger behind bars. But insiders say there's another reason, one that matters more. That isolation isn't just for safety, it's for control. That ward is now the battleground for what comes next. The legal war over whether this was insanity or something far more chilling. Cold, calculated awareness hiding behind a calm face. That medical ward isn't just a hospital wing. It's the real battlefield. The defense will point to it and say, look, he's sick. He needs treatment, not punishment. They'll paint him as broken, detached from reality. But prosecutors won't let that slide. They'll play the gas station footage on repeat. Nick browsing, choosing a drink, waiting calmly in line. No panic, no confusion, just control. Their case is simple and brutal. He knew exactly what he was doing, and that's the real horror. The monster didn't look insane. He looked polite, quiet, and ordinary. Just a man under bright lights holding a drink and a dark secret that tore lives apart. Brentwood and Exposition Park are only 15 miles apart, but the distance between the son Rob Reiner thought he knew and the man in that footage is endless. That's where the truth and the terror really live. While the media chases the timeline counting minutes and theories, experts focus on what doesn't lie. Evidence, physics, biology, silent facts that don't care about opinion. Enter Mary Ellen O'Toole, a former FBI profiler who spent her life reading crime scenes like open books. Her analysis stripped away the drama and exposed something deeper. The lack of forced entry wasn't just procedural, it was psychological. The threat came from inside, from someone trusted. But what truly shifted the case was the nature of the injuries found on Rob and Michelle. The reports list multiple sharp force injuries, cold and clinical. But to experts, that phrase screams rage. This wasn't random. It wasn't about money or panic. It was personal, intimate, the kind of violence that only comes when love turns into fury. O'Toole calls it what it is, overkill. The force used went far beyond what was necessary. It wasn't about ending life. It was about erasing connection, years of resentment, anger, and buried emotion exploding in one uncontrollable moment. But what truly cornered the defense wasn't emotion, it was physics. In forensic terms, it's called slippage. When someone attacks with extreme force, the body fights back, grip fails, hands slide. And when that happens, the attacker often injures themselves, leaving traces, blood, DNA, evidence that can't be reasoned away. That's the trap. No matter how carefully someone plans, science exposes the truth. Commingled biology tells the real story, not just who was attacked, but who struck first. And if Nick Reiner suffered cuts during the assault, his DNA wouldn't just appear in the house where he lived, it would appear in the wrong places, right next to the people he was supposed to protect. Those traces, the blood, the skin cells, they tell everything. Once they're mixed, there's no turning back. Forensic experts call it a biochemical handshake, proof that locks a person into the exact moment of violence. It's not guesswork, it's time-stamped truth, placing the suspect at the center of the act down to the second it happened. That detail kills every excuse. No one walked in later, no one found the scene, science says otherwise. The pattern inside the house told the same story. No broken drawers, no valuables missing, no chaos of a robbery. The target wasn't money, the target was human. Every movement, every detail screamed intention. Whoever did this knew the layout, the habits, the rhythm of that home. They knew where Rob and Michelle would be and when. This wasn't a stranger breaking in, it was someone already inside. When the yellow tape finally came down and the forensic vans rolled away, what lingered over Brentwood wasn't just evidence, it was heartbreak, a silence heavier than grief. Forensics can explain how it happened, but not why it hurts so much. The world lost more than a Hollywood icon. It lost its sense of safety. People who grew up watching Rob's films couldn't believe what they were hearing. One viewer summed it up in a single sentence that stopped the internet cold. To give life to a person only to have that person end yours. That line hit like a lightning bolt. It cut through every report, every expert interview, straight to the heart of the tragedy. Rob Reiner had spent decades creating life on screen, giving audiences warmth, humor, hope. His characters taught generations about love, empathy, and second chances. Off-screen, he lifted others up, mentoring young filmmakers, speaking for justice, fighting for children's futures. He built things, he didn't destroy them. And that's what makes this unbearable. The man who dedicated his life to kindness was destroyed by the very bond he cherished most, his own son. The pain goes deeper than celebrity or fame. It's the collapse of something sacred, the betrayal of a universal truth. Parents protect, children grow, love endures. Rob and Michelle didn't fail because they didn't love enough. They loved too much, fiercely, blindly, until that love became the very thing that left them unguarded. And that's what makes this tragedy echo far beyond Hollywood. It wasn't just a crime, it was a heartbreak the world wasn't ready to face. Their story proves something terrifying and painfully human. You can have all the money, doctors, resources, and compassion in the world, but you still can't save someone who's chosen darkness. That's the brutal truth. Brentwood exposed that addiction and untreated mental illness don't live in isolation. They leak into every corner of a family, twisting love and leaving scars that never fade. This tragedy doesn't end with arrests or headlines. It lingers, restless, unfinished, like a storm refusing to pass. The same question keeps echoing louder with every new detail. How does love quietly turn dangerous without anyone stopping it in time? This wasn't sudden. It built up slowly, pressure stacking day after day behind those perfect gates. The home everyone thought was safe had been cracking for years. Now, even as the yellow tape disappears and the streets of Brentwood hum back to life, something there will never feel normal again. From the outside, it looks calm, but underneath, trust is broken for good. This wasn't just loss. It shattered the illusion that wealth or good intentions can fix everything. Rob Reiner spent decades making films about loyalty and connection, about standing by the people you love no matter what. That wasn't just art, it was belief. He lived it. He fought for family even when it hurt. And Michelle, she was the quiet strength beside him, holding it all together. While no one saw the pressure building inside those walls, they looked unshakable, but they were carrying a weight nobody could see. This case keeps dragging hard truths into the open. Mental struggles don't stay quiet. When ignored, they grow. Love without limits doesn't always heal. Sometimes it hides danger. And silence, even when born from hope, can turn deadly. Every new report adds another layer. More tension, more confusion, more heartbreak. It's not a clean story. It's jagged, raw, and disturbingly real. Maybe that's why people can't look away, because behind the fame and the headlines, it's really about us. Families everywhere are watching and asking questions they've avoided for years. What red flags did we miss? When does care become denial? When does love start protecting the wrong person? Those are ugly questions, but they're finally being asked. This isn't just a Hollywood story anymore. It's a mirror, a reminder that even behind the nicest homes and biggest smiles, pain doesn't vanish when ignored. It just waits until one day it explodes. With every new detail, the weight gets heavier, not lighter. Nothing feels settled. Not the case, not the grief, not the questions that keep multiplying. The deeper this story goes, the clearer it becomes. We've only seen part of it. Rob Reiner gave the world laughter, warmth, and unforgettable heart. His characters felt real because they came from a place of empathy, truth, and deep humanity. He shouldn't be remembered by his final hour because his life meant so much more. His legacy is joy, connection, and belief in people. And Michelle Reiner, her grace, her endurance, her quiet strength, she carried more than anyone will ever know. Their love was powerful, and though it ended in heartbreak, it was built on loyalty that ran deep. The investigation will keep unfolding, experts debating sanity, intent, and motive. But in the court of public opinion, one truth already stands. This was never about greed or chance. It was love stretched past its breaking point. If this story touched you, take a moment to share your thoughts with respect. Let's talk about awareness, boundaries, and what families really face behind closed doors. Not just the crime, but the human cost. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told with honesty and dignity, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Old Hollywood Whispers. Your support helps keep truth alive, told the right way. Rest in peace, Rob and Michelle. You gave the world more than it ever gave back. The world couldn't save you, but it will never forget you.